Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, the 29th of October, and we're here with a new friend, one of our incredible partners. We've got a pretty big deal person here, our friend Shouvik Paul, who is the Chief Revenue Officer over at Copyleaks. They are doing some just bat crazy, incredible stuff with artificial intelligence, and I promise you that you're gonna want to pay close attention to what Shouvik says. So with that, Shouvik, let's hand it over to you and have you walk us through everything that's happening with Copyleaks and what you can do with Copyleaks and specifically your LMS for those Canvas users out there.
Amazing. Thanks for that intro, Mark. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, to everyone. As Mark said, my name is Shouvik Paul. Paul, by the way, is the last name. Unfortunate thing to go through life with, but it is. And I am the CRO of a company called Copyleaks. We're one of the world's leading AI companies as it relates to edtech. And just for this particular session, what we're going to do is focus in on how we're applying AI to plagiarism detection. But just to take a step back, and I apologize if you all hear sirens in the background. I live in the heart of Manhattan. And for those of you who've been here ever on a trip, you know there's always background noise. It is what it is. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Copyleaks in general before I dive into what we're doing with plagiarism detection in general. We are, as I mentioned, a artificial intelligence company. Everyone in our company comes from just building very cool AI technology. For example, one of our other platforms, we build artificial intelligence to help governments specifically, or large education institutions that have a lot of standardized tests where, again, multiple choice, very easy to grade. But when it comes to things like essay questions, those usually take a human grader a very long time to grade. When you're looking at thousands or perhaps millions of exam papers to grade, we use artificial intelligence to grade those papers within seconds with the accuracy of like 1% of a human grader. So we're building some very, very cool things in technology in general. We have offices here in New York, in Israel, and spread out in other parts of the world as well. Now, as we continue to sort of build tools for the education sector, what we realized is when it came to plagiarism detection, which, as we all know, look, most universities, K through 12, are using some form of plagiarism detection, sometimes with very large providers, sometimes with more smaller type providers. They're integrated in through great partners like Canvas. What we found, however, was some of the technology out there was a little outdated. And what I mean by that is, look, in the education field, when you're dealing with students, particularly, it's such a cat and mouse game, right? They're always looking for new ways to beat the system. And let's face it, what's a student do? What's the first thing a student's going to do? They're going to go to YouTube and they're going to type in something like how to cheat plagiarism check, right? Common terminology. And what you end up with is hundreds and hundreds of videos, right, on how to beat some of the leading plagiarism detection platforms out there. And believe it or not, the most common methodology that's recommended is, hey, paraphrase. And that's how you're going to get away with cheating plagiarism detectors, right? And we looked at that and we realized, well, first of all, our question was, well, how come these plagiarism detectors aren't detecting paraphrasing? And the answer really is paraphrasing is really complicated. For example, if I said, I need to make a trip to Utah today, there's only so many ways people can write that sentence. And you'll obviously have millions of people writing that sentence in the same way. That does not mean that they're plagiarizing. It just means that there's only that many ways you can write a sentence. So it is hard to then say, let's just show all results for matching sentences, right? And that's where we said, well, plagiarism, if it's getting beaten by paraphrasing, there's got to be a way that we can then apply artificial intelligence to really uncover instances where people are paraphrasing and using artificial intelligence to weed out the ones where they're paraphrasing with the intent of plagiarizing or beating the system somehow, right? And that's how this platform was really born. And we are now used by, honestly, thousands of educational institutions on a global scale. And the really big reason that people are using us, in a lot of cases switching over to us, is because we, at the end of the day, look, if people are beating whatever system that you're using, whatever you're paying for is completely worthless. And if the number one way that they're doing that is through paraphrasing, we are the ones that are actually uncovering more hits there. A couple of other things that really differentiate us right off the bat that I want to mention, apart from using AI to detect paraphrasing, is the fact that we're doing this in now over 100 languages. So if you have courses in French or Thai or Hindi, we can do this in a variety of different languages. The third thing, which is really important, is we realize and recognize that a lot of the educational institutions that we were working with, they have computer science has become very, very popular, right? And the reality is plagiarism detectors have zero value in a comp sci class. There are no sentences. It's just like all code, right? And we said, being programmers ourselves, we realize that there's a lot of copying and pasting that goes on when it comes to codes. And we built in to our platform a way for computer science departments, for example, to send code, and we do essentially duplication checks against code, similar to how plagiarism detectors work. And last but not least, we also recognize in this cat and mouse game with students where they're always trying to stay one step ahead. The reality is, yeah, students always come up with really interesting ways to beat the system. And being, again, AI and computer, learning guys, what we said was, let's set up the system in a way where we get it. Sometimes the system will get beat. There's no such thing as 100% proof. But let's figure out a way that the computer system can learn on its own in terms of what are some anomalies or trends that are happening, and look into that and essentially self-improve and catch things, right? And so, for example, we are also looking for things like white ink, or when, and by the way, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's there are these very inexpensive, often free softwares out there where students can upload their papers. And what it'll do is at the end of words, right, it'll add a little symbol. And to the human eye, that's not visible. Or it'll take letters like the letter O and turn it into the Greek letter O. And again, this is all being automated. So students aren't manually going in and doing this. They're feeding a paper. 2 seconds later, it's changed all these things. To the human eye, you can't see the difference. To a computer, it confuses and throws off, especially plagiarism detectors, because they no longer recognize the words. And we are using computer learning to figure out new and innovative ways that these things are occurring, and we are automatically updating our system to adjust to those types of things. So those are some very, very top level things that we are doing to essentially stay one step ahead of the game. The way our platform works is we are integrated in deeply with Canvas, and they've been a phenomenal partner for us. I can't tell you enough about how easy this integration's been for us. And also, we have a lot these days. I would say, I was just telling Mark earlier, we're seeing an unbelievably high number of people calling us every single week saying, hey, we just switched over to Canvas. We're looking for a plagiarism detector. Can you help us? And for us, what that basically means is we have an off-the-shelf integration with Canvas. And we've tried to make this as turnkey as possible for anybody that's on Canvas to basically switch this on inside of the Canvas interface, right? No coding required, no effort required on your end. Essentially, if you were an admin, you would come in, you would follow our very easy to follow screenshots to essentially enable this inside of Canvas. And then the idea is, as the instructor or to your instructors, you can say, hey, look, Copyleaks is now available inside of Canvas. It's now been switched on. You can modify settings in here if you want on as an instructor, and you essentially will now see your papers scanned through Copyleaks, and you'll get the plagiarism score, as well as you can assign a grade, all from within Canvas. So very, very simple. And again, if you also want to make this available to, for example, students to be able to see their results from within Canvas, you can also enable that. And the idea is everything is displayed inside of the Canvas interface, right? So we've made this very, very easy. So what is it that people see? And going back to, again, some of the things I talked about a little earlier, the idea here was, if you are running a plagiarism checker of any kind, let's make sure that you have the best shot of uncovering how, if there are instances where people are not just copying and pasting, that still continues to happen, surprisingly, at a really high volume. But the truth is, in this age, I think most students understand that their papers are going to be run through some kind of a plagiarism detection software. They are going to get caught if they just simply copy and paste. So again, they're paraphrasing, right? So the idea here is we accept, as I mentioned earlier, almost any kind of file, right? You have, again, with papers coming in from Canvas, it can be Word docs, Google Docs, whatever it is, we'll accept it. We also take free text. Their URLs, that comes into play more so with students are blogging, and instead of having to copy paste or turn that into something, you can just simply send over a URL. As I mentioned earlier, we also, one of the really interesting features with Copyleaks is this ability to scan code, right, for computer science classes and such. And we can compare two texts. In other words, you have two types of papers. Hey, I recognize this assignment from 2 years ago or last year. Maybe it got handed forward to the next year's students. We can do a side-by-side comparison. And we can also take images and extract text using OCR out of those images. So where that comes into play is more so, particularly in education, is when you have things like graphs or charts. Now, just to be clear, we're not scanning, like if there's a picture of me, we're not doing like a Google reverse image search. What we're doing is we're extracting the text to see where else that text may be showing up and running results on that. So the idea then becomes, once you upload a file in, just to quickly show you some of the parameters here, there's some customization that can be done. Again, this can be set in Canvas at the admin level, where essentially what we're doing when we're scanning a paper is we're looking through the live internet, right? We're doing like a real-time search of the entire internet. We're looking through an internal database. This is a Copyleaks database. In other words, we have, as I mentioned, just thousands and thousands of universities and documents, like millions of documents being submitted. We add those to our internal database. So these are, for example, if a paper from Berkeley gets submitted by the professor, it gets added to our internal database. If that student shared it with a student at Stanford or Oxford, we will most likely also detect that in our internal database, and we'll scan through that. We also allow our institutions to upload their own documents. If you have the last 5 years, 10 years of documentation, and you want to upload that in, we do that through batch upload. By the way, there's no extra. We don't charge anything extra for any of this stuff. And very often what we find, especially these days, people are, when they're migrating over, essentially, they're moving over from somebody else. We help them do that migration of all their documents that they may have stored somewhere else to move it over to us. And then the idea really is you can have some settings where you can ignore, you can say, hey, listen, when I'm running a paper, if it's referencing something, there's stuff in the footer, just ignore that kind of stuff. There's quotes, let's ignore all of that, etc. And then what we're doing is we are running multiple levels of checks through that document. So of course we are going to look for identical matches and minor changes. And again, when you look at other plagiarism detectors, that's what they're basically doing, right? And where we take it to the next level is we are looking for, as I mentioned, paraphrasing. And so just so you can see what this looks like, and again, I'm showing this to you, by the way, inside of our interface. Everything you're seeing, this will be displayed inside of your Canvas interface because you'll be doing this through Canvas. So for example, just using this as an example, this is a article on the Statue of Liberty. And what you're basically seeing, again, all of this result, this is the exact results you would see right inside of Canvas, right? If you were the teacher, you would be looking at your dashboard in Canvas and you'd see this result inside of it. And what would happen here and what you're seeing here is on top, we're giving you a aggregate score, right? So what this is telling me is, look, 99% of everything that I'm seeing on this page has been plagiarized somewhere, right? On the right-hand side, what you're seeing is all different matches, right? And again, this looks, familiar to, I'm assuming, a lot of the people that are joining this call. What you are able to then do is essentially click into any of the suspected documents. We made everything interactive. In other words, you can click on anything, it'll jump you to that section. Imagine if it's a very long document, you don't want to have to scroll and find things. And secondly, we have color-coded everything. So visually, it's very intuitive and easy to understand what you're looking at, right? So for example, in this document, everything in red, this is all word for word matches, right? So there's, as you can tell, there's a lot of that going on in this document. Secondly, you can see that there are some words here, these are minor changes, right? The word finished got changed to complete. The word built got changed to constructed. And that's interesting to know. And finally, the third layer was basically looking for paraphrase content. And this is a small but actually very relevant and an interesting example of this. Here's a sentence that says, seen as a symbol of welcome to immigrants arriving by sea. This got changed to a welcoming signal to immigrants arriving from abroad. Now, let me just, obviously this is paraphrase content and we're highlighting it. Now, let me just pause for a second and explain what's happening here on the background, right? So as I mentioned earlier, so many things can be, there's only so many ways you can write sentences, right? So many things can be paraphrased, but like that doesn't mean that the person is plagiarizing. That's not their intent, right? So it would be really unhelpful if we just said, hey, here's 1,000,001 hits that we got for potential paraphrase content, right? That's not useful. So what we are basically doing is we are ruling out false positives. That's why the AI aspect of this is so important, right? What our AI system is doing is it's applying, it's essentially understanding logic, right? So it's saying, okay, first of all, is this just like, if this document was blank and it just had this one sentence, it actually doesn't say much. That sentence, again, like could the intent, in other words, could just be writing this sentence. What our algorithm is basically doing is it's finding out what that sentence, first of all, is it in context to this article? Are there any other indications that there is intent to cheat or deceive or to plagiarize? And if so, then we display the result. In this case, look, it's pretty clear that there's a lot of instances here that it's I mean of plagiarism, and the intent is pretty obvious. So we're displaying this result, and that's why, you know, when you look at the actual overall results, what you're not seeing is just like millions and millions of hits. It's really narrowing it down to those that are most likely to be, again, to be trying to like beat the system using paraphrasing. Results can then also, by the way, be further filtered through, hey, you know, we're okay with certain sources if it's coming from the internal database. Ignore those types of sources and things like that. We can absolutely modify and change out. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this can be done in a variety of languages. So if you are doing this, for example, in Spanish, we show results that work across a multitude, over 100 different languages. And for those of you who are interested in, again, seeing what this looks like with code, again, I'm just showing this to you in our interface, but you can send this also via the Canvas integration. The idea really is that, you know, here there's a little piece of code on the right-hand side, and just so everyone understands, with code, what we're doing is we are specifically looking at certain repositories. These are like the usual suspects when it comes to people copying code from, right? So you're looking at the Stack Overflows and the GitHubs of the world, right? And there's about, let's say, 20 or so different repositories that we're looking through. In terms of the results themselves, works exactly like the standard sentence-based or word-based detection, where in this case, there's a piece of code. This looks like it's a hit off of something off of Stack Overflow. Again, I can click on any piece of code. It'll jump me to that section and say, all right, here's where we're finding that there's a match with this code. You know, displaying those results right inside. Again, the idea is all of this would be shown to you right from your Canvas interface. So we make it very, very simple and again, very, very intuitive to do this. So, yeah.
Hey, Shouvik, let's take a quick question here. So we've got our friend Tyler Weldon, he's the Canvas and Academic Technology Administrator over at UAB, the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And he had asked, he said, can Copyleaks work with the plagiarism tool on assignments within Canvas? Do you know?
Sorry, can it work with assignments?
Can Copyleaks work with the assignments tool that is in Canvas?
Yeah,
the
so
plagiarism
you know what?
tool
We
that Canvas
actually
has
in the process. So a couple things. We are so as I mentioned, we have a couple of different integrations going, and when we did, you know, if you know a little bit about how LTI integrations work, there are a lot of different options, right? As a matter of fact, there's hundreds of different like configurations. What we did off the shelf would basically say, all right, what's like the most commonly used tools, right? And that's how we did, like, that's like, think about that as like, all right, this is like the lowest common denominator. Let's do an integration, get it out there. When we work with different universities, especially as I mentioned, like now we're getting far and foremost, we're getting a lot of cases of people coming to us that are using Canvas. In a lot of cases, they're actually also not just using Canvas, and they have an integration with somebody else, like a different plagiarism detection software. And what they'll say to us is, hey, look, like we are used to a certain kind of flow in terms of how our professors are using plagiarism detection from within Canvas. So what we are now doing is we are working with with different universities to understand what are the functionalities, if any, that are not off the shelf for us. And then we are, in certain cases, very quickly. We've done things where, like, within a day, we flip essentially a couple of toggles on the back end to enable it. In other instances, we're like, hey, listen, like, maybe there's a new version, and Canvas does a really good job of constantly updating their system and adding new functionality and features. And we are constantly working at enabling and taking advantage of those new features. So to answer your question, I'm not sure if it's available. I frankly don't know right off the bat if that's available like turnkey, but if it's not, it's something that we can definitely enable.
Enable pretty easily. Okay, so Tyler's one of our good friends. Tyler, shoot me a note. I'll connect you with Shouvik, and we can talk specifically about that, if that's something that can be turned on, and how quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Shouvik.
I'll pause there because I think that, look, a couple other things I just really quickly wanted to mention. As you can imagine, these days, a lot of people are looking for alternatives for a variety of reasons. One is, again, they're finding that their system, whatever they're on, is getting beat. People are coming up, and again, there's a lot of paraphrasing, and then, like, as I showed you before, there's a million and one videos on here on how to beat these systems, and so they're going, if I'm paying for something, what's the point? I want those hits, and that's probably the number one reason people are switching over. But also the code detection thing is really interesting. A lot of universities are saying to us, yeah, like, the plagiarism checkers, they're not useful for our comp sci department. But the third thing really is that from a cost perspective, we tend to be, significantly more competitive than some of the other larger providers. And so, going into especially this post-COVID era, we're finding a lot of universities, looking to cut costs very quickly. And in our case, it's not just, you can not only cut costs, frankly, you're going to get probably higher number of hits as a result of, like, sort of the AI platform that we're applying to this. So, we're seeing a lot of that happening. We're also, I think we take a lot of pride in this. We're a technology company. We're not as big. We're not as big as some of the big guys out there, but we operate like a tech company where we take customer support really, really seriously. And that's one of the things that's made our relationship with Canvas really great. I think they take customer support really seriously as well. And so we have we're very hands-on. We have a great support team that's based here in the US. And as I mentioned, we have offices elsewhere as well. We do support out of, and we have really awesome, like, videos and support and ticketing centers and things like that as well. So again, I'll open the floor up at this point for any other questions that people may have.
Let's take this, Shouvik. Talk to us. If you are talk to me before I jump into that. You talked about both K-12 and higher ed. Is there one of those kind of segments or sectors that you're more proficient in, or that you see more customers in, or is it really you do both of them really well?
We do both really well. It's what's interesting is, and I'm sure you guys are seeing the same thing. Look, historically, it's all been, I would say, heavily weighed towards higher ed. But I think post-COVID, we are seeing, a overwhelming amount of K through 12 come to us. I think, just given the circumstances, a lot of them have been forced to go into online teaching modes or remote learning, and they're signing up for Canvas. And as a result, I think they're all, that's where we're seeing if I look at, like, the last 3 months in terms of new customers, I would say we're seeing a lot more in the K through 12. But as far as our platform is concerned, we've sort of, it serves both equally. There really is no real difference in the way we're conducting the search or the methodology we're using. What is really interesting anecdotally is we're actually working on a paper, infographics that will probably be published at the end of the year, where we're looking at trends when it comes to cheating or plagiarizing in general, sort of pre and post COVID. And what we found, again, there should be a paper coming out hopefully soon that we can share with everybody. But what we're finding is there has been actually a pretty big jump in just like cheating. And I'm guessing some of it has to do with the fact that there's way more students now that are remote learning. So they're not sitting in class. They're not, and there's this tendency of like, wow, I'm at home. I should just get this done. Let me just copy and paste from somewhere. Or again, like, let me run this paper through some third-party provider that's going to add white ink to it so I can beat the plagiarism systems or whatever else. We're seeing like a very unusual spike in that. And even within that, one of the things that we're starting to look at is there a difference in that between higher ed and K through 12? Like, where is it happening more? I don't actually have the answer for that off the bat, but like, we're really closely watching that as well.
That's awesome. Sorry, I was on mute. Always getting that mute button to click will never get me right. We have a question here, Shouvik, from, you'll see up on your screen, from Bree on YouTube, who's wondering what databases, Course Hero, Wikipedia, etc., does this tool check against?
Yeah, we have a variety of different sources that we check against. And if anyone's really interested, give us, feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to send you some more information. But, for example, we look through like 1,500 or so, 15,000 or so academic journals. Like millions and millions of articles. When it comes to things like source code, as I mentioned, we're looking through very specific, like 20 or so repositories. So we have like a whole gamut of sources apart from just like the internal database as well that we look through.
Cool. Let's take another one from Bree. So she's saying, and of course, Bree, you know that I'm always a million times out of a million times going to be a fan of you moving from Blackboard to Canvas. I mean, that's my job. But if they move from Blackboard, safe assigned to Canvas, will they lose their previously submitted papers? How does that work theoretically?
Yeah, great question. As you can imagine, these days, most people, as I mentioned, so just to put this into perspective, just this month, we've had like 7 to 8, I would say, fairly large institutions move over to Copyleaks, and in every one of these cases, as you can imagine, they're moving over from an existing plagiarism platform, right? So they have the similar sort of problem that you have, which is, hey, I have years and years of information that lives somewhere else. What do I do? So first of all, look, there's no way for us to go in. Like, I can't go into your account in Blackboard and remove anything or take anything out. If you can export it out, right? And in these cases where we're talking, where people have switched over to us, they've been able to extract their information from whoever their providers are. There's one that in particular, very large plagiarism checker. It's happening more frequently. They're exporting their data out, and what we do is we do a batch import to get, like, again, if you have 5 years of data or whatever else it is, we'll import that in. We don't charge anything for any of this stuff. We want to make this migration as easy as possible. Also, the way we migrate them, that data in, we're pretty flexible. We've had requests for everything from, like, can we use like a FTP server to do that, to whatever else, and we like figure out with you. But we can't, just to be clear, if you can export the data out, we'll get it in for you. There's really no way for us to go in and extract that data for you.
Yep, that's fair. Good recap there, everybody. So as long as you can export the data out of whatever your current provider, wherever they have it, they can import it in for you at no additional cost. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Shouvik, what else? Any other things that you think we ought to make sure our listeners are aware of related to Copyleaks and Canvas?
Yeah, I would say that, look, I mean, what's really interesting is we've done very, very little marketing over the years. As a fact, I would say zero marketing. It's all been word of mouth. And this has become a pretty interesting, like, look, this is a pretty common story in tech, right? You have innovation, you have innovative approaches coming in and players coming in and disrupting the market. And for us, we're very focused in on AI. We have no doubt that the landscape is going to continue to change. There's going to be, new ways for students to continually find ways to beat the system. In our case, what we're basically really focused in on is AI and machine learning. And that is what's getting the hits and results. And that's why we have the kind of customers, not just in education, by the way. NASA uses us. So does BBC, for example. BBC, it's really interesting. It's not just, let me check the content that we're putting out. In their case, it's, once an article gets posted on bbc.com, they want to make sure others are not, like other media companies or bloggers, aren't taking their content, paraphrasing it, and then monetizing that content. So we're being trusted, and the word is really getting around. It's all word of mouth, honestly, and through partners such as Canvas is how we're really doing this. But at the end of the day, I think what you'll find with Copyleaks is because we're like a tech first company, what really matters is just the results, and you're going to get more hits and better results through us. And if any of you are interested, feel free to contact us. You can come to our website. You can book a demo directly from our website. We'll be happy to take you through a demo, or we'd be happy to set up a call and talk through any specifics. For example, such as, hey, I'm on Blackboard. We're moving over to Canvas. Like, how will this work? Those are things that we're going through multiple times a day with our customers. My email, and Mark, if you don't mind sharing this in the chat, it's show@copyleaks.com. Feel free to, any of you, to email me directly. I'd be more than happy to either assist you or guide you in the right direction.
Love it. And we just shared that with everybody on the different channels. There's also a great place, sales@copyleaks.com. If you have specific questions as well. I like going to Shouvik. That's what I would choose. Go check out our partners at copyleaks.com. They are doing incredible stuff. You saw the list of customers, both doing a lot of work in K-12 and higher ed. We're really impressed and grateful for the partnership with them, and look forward to many more years of success and innovation. So with that, Shouvik, thanks for joining us, everybody. We are back tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. for the last day of the work week. We're meeting with a couple of the Canvas rock stars out in the Blue Valley School District. So we will see you tomorrow morning, everybody. Thanks again, Shouvik, and thanks a lot, Copyleaks.
All right, thank you all. Really appreciate the time. And Mark, keep rocking it at Canvas. You guys are just killing it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Thanks, my friend.